transition to sharing my screen and talking about our PowerPoint. I am also going to kind of prepare everyone. If you have a smartphone device or anything that can take a picture, we do have a QR code at the end of this presentation with resources. All you would have to do is hold up your camera, turn your camera on, hold it over the QR code, and then it'll ask to automatically open a web page where you can gain access to a multitude of different PDFs for resources. So again, just kind of preparing everyone toward the end that we will have that available for you. As I share my screen, I will not have access to questions in the chat box. I know last time we did this, I believe Amy was kind of monitoring that. So hopefully we can kind of stop one another and converse on that. But to get started, my name is Brittany Hoover. I'm currently a therapist working in a rural community in Indiana, Pennsylvania. I am also a doctoral candidate at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, going for her doctoral degree in counselor education and supervision. Right now, my primary focus is teaching as well as providing community-based services. And a lot of what prompted this presentation today was my experience, I'm sure Amy's as well, working in Indiana, with what we were seeing with children and the lack of services being provided or lack of access to resources being provided. So we wanted to bring awareness, bring some creative strategies for intervention and counseling services, and just give that information out worldwide. Amy?
Yes, good morning. My name is Amy Halter, and like Brittany said, I am also a doctoral candidate at IUP. I am a licensed professional counselor, and kind of what Brittany had said as well, like, when we switched to telehealth, I had a lot of little ones that I was working with all the way up to teenagers, and having that transition of how can we still make this therapy meaningful, especially now during a pandemic? How can we have these interventions and get a little bit creative when we are not in person to do some of the great work we do in person, that we can still translate that into virtual? So I'm so happy to see everyone, because this is a really important topic. And unfortunately, I wonder, are we going to be virtual for a long time, or are some people going to choose to be virtual? So we would just want to make sure as clinicians, we are updating our skills and really being able to adapt to the needs of our clients.
For sure, for sure. So as we go along with this, pause. Am I still, oh, mine pause.
Yeah, you're there.
Mine pause. As we go along with this, if you have questions, comments, if you need clarification, feel free to send it into the chat box. We'll try our best to monitor that as best as possible, but we're gonna go ahead and dive right in. Maybe. There we go. Oh. It's gonna be a good day.
And again, we all have so much experience with this kind of stuff, best laid plans, and things take a second. So
yes. Yes, yes, yes.
there we go.
Just wants to take its time loading today. Come on. So maybe we could talk about our experiences from others. If you want to put a quick message in the chat box, what are some of your personal experiences with what you have seen in working with youth or not having access to youth? Tell us either way what your role is currently and what you have seen in the field. Okay. So go ahead and do that if you desire while we're talking a little bit here, and we will keep moving. So COVID-19 and youth statistics, how has this, or how is this currently still impacting children of the United States and their access to resources, access to mental health resources? We have some statistics here, and I found this quote to be very intriguing, very impactful. It's saying this is a universal crisis, and for some children, the impact will be lifelong. I personally have a 5-year-old son who is now conditioned to believe it is completely normal to wear a mask in public. I had to take a step back a few months ago and really think about the impact that this is having, and the type of norm that we are setting for our children and what that looks like. And I also found this statistic off of the U.S. Census Bureau, and that worldwide, the amount of children absent from a school setting is 168 million due to lack of access to internet resources. I mean, this is a very impactful, monumental crisis that we have experienced or have all endured within the past year. And just thinking about those lack of resources or lack of access really just frustrates me personally, in knowing that this service is needed. You know, these services are absolutely needed at this time. Inequality and access to computers. So talking about telehealth services, you know, even needing internet to have access to the computer or to the web has been widely documented. Lower income households are less likely than higher income ones to have internet access and computer availability. I put that in there specifically because I personally work at a community-based mental health service agency. My population or my demographic is 90% medical assistance clientele. You know, kind of making me believe that they come from a low socioeconomic status, a home of maybe impoverished living styles. So, how can I help them gain access to this resource that is so highly needed? So, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. A little bit more of the side effects. We also know demographic wise that half of children are being raised today in a single parent household, making this access consistently more challenging. You know, with childcare, COVID, lack of schooling, the single parent is now juggling multiple roles. Children of lower socioeconomic status, meaning $50,000 or less a year, are less likely to have access to online or internet resources, as we've already identified. Domestic violent rates have increased by at least 23% during the COVID-19 crisis. And demand for counseling services during COVID-19 for youth in particular increased by 63%. So there are a lot of red flags going off here. You know, a lot of things shifting as per the crisis, as per the virus that we have experienced. My concern is the domestic violence, the lack of resources, the lack of access in providing this service.
A little bit about, piggybacking off some things that Brittany had just shared. Children are very vulnerable. And as we know, we are all mandated reporters. And who are those reporters? They are teachers, they are coaches, they are therapists, they are religious, like parishioners and pastors. And so what's happening is those support systems that we have in place, the children are no longer being seen there. So of course, what does that do? That leaves this entire population not being monitored. So we also know that research shows that increased stress levels among parents is a major predictor of physical abuse and neglect. And I think I am a parent as well, so I can attest to the feelings of feeling stressed, feeling concerned about who is going to be home if I'm trying to work, and my kids learning from home. So I can identify with a lot of that stress. And being a stressed out parent, we could have a more likelihood of responding to our children with anxious behaviors or demands, maybe in an aggressive way, or sometimes, unfortunately, in an abusive way. So again, we know that, these support systems that are identifying children and kind of getting CYS involved are not in place. So that is a big concern that has come out of, the COVID-19 pandemic so far. So child abuse considerations due to COVID-19, I found a lot of this very impactful. Some of the research that I was able to dive into that, official reports of child welfare in many states have plummeted. Even while news reports described increases in hospital visits due to child abuse. So again, kind of what we were talking about, that it is, they're not getting those referrals, children are not being seen. So what is happening is, there's that decrease, even though we're seeing an increase in hospital rates. According to the Administration of Children and Youth Families, 67.3% of abuse referrals do come from those mandated reporters. So that is a huge chunk that is keeping an eye on those children. So how are we going to connect children and adolescents with telehealth? There are so many things, and I think logistically, like I said, even as a parent, I am looking at some of these things, and I've had to address some of these things. So, as being a telehealth provider for children, explaining it in a language that children can understand and allow them to ask the questions. I know that when I was connecting with some of my elementary school kids, they could not wait to take the computer and show me their rooms and show me this and show me that. And we were going through, and then of course all of a sudden they sit the computer down and go to tell their sister something and never come back. So we had to kind of talk about, like, this is what it is, when Miss Amy's on the computer with you, and this is some of the kind of the rules that we have. And with children, it's a lot less formal than it would be with adults. We consider, we do some rapport building with pictures and drawing, finding those ways to connect, because I'm not sure, how many of you work with children, but I know some of my best sessions that I have with children are hands-on, when we are drawing together, we're playing a game together, or we're getting out some of those anger, flashcards, or games that we have, that when kids are engaged, they're more apt to start talking. And remembering children are so distracted at home, whether it's their dog, their sibling, the phone ringing, and trying to talk with the families about creating that therapy space. Is it really being at the kitchen table, where that's like the hub of the entire household, is probably not the most, effective. So working with your families to say, where is a time from, 9 to 10 for our sessions, that Josie can be someplace that is private and out of the way. Asking the family to say, hey, do you have the resources to have some materials on hand, for the child and even the adolescent, that we can be working on some of the same skills that we do in session, but maybe it looks different, of writing or drawing it out. Just to, again, have that hands-on piece, because staring at a computer, we all know, for hours at a time, your engagement tends to go down. And I think the whole point of is just being creative. There have been clients that I felt like I am standing on my head here, trying to be so, working so hard to keep these sessions going. And of course, it's a lot easier now than it was, the first couple of weeks of transitioning to telehealth. So deciding parental participation, and this is one of the ones, if anyone has any feedback or has any experience with this, we would love to hear your ideas, because as we know, in sessions, they're confidential. We take our teens and our children, we can maybe connect with the parents a little bit, but our sessions are occurring away from parents. So we need to really decide, what level of participation do we want from our families, based on the age. Obviously, a 5-year-old that was coming to session maybe for separation anxiety, him being alone on the computer and having a session for 45 minutes to an hour independently is probably going to be a bigger struggle than our 13, 14-year-olds that can just take the computer to the room and have a session. So really engaging the parents to say, are you going to be home? Are you going to be able to sit at the beginning and connect with me and give me some ideas of how things are going? We also want to talk about the siblings, because I know in my house, if someone's on the computer, if the phone rings, everyone wants to know, who is it? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? So trying to create some of those boundaries too, that this is still, your client's time away from, siblings and those distractions. And I like, how I was running some of my, my sessions, is discussing with the parents and saying, let's set aside a time to collaborate. It could be at the beginning of the session, the end of the session, to talk about those concerns and talk about, what is going well, or what are some things that, you are struggling with, having your child home with you. And again, the privacy, I think that is just so very important, because as counselors, that is one thing we always talking about, confidentiality, and we're talking about, protecting information. Even with the teenagers, I would always say, I will ask your permission to share with mom or dad some of the things that, we are talking about. But now here you are at home, and maybe, I have a case example later of a lot of parent and child conflict. So is the child really going to find a safe space to really talk about their parents and saying, like, oh, mom is, pressuring me, or, I have a lot of chores, or we're just not getting along. How can we guarantee that child or adolescents, privacy, so that their sessions are meaningful and beneficial to them? Does anyone have any feedback on that, or what they have done to address the idea of adult participation via telehealth with their children clients? Or again, if you're more comfortable, the chat's open if you want to, drop something in there as well. But I think, I don't know about you, Brittany, but this was one of the biggest struggles that I have had. Yes, one of our comments is about the teenagers is the most challenging, and you are correct. That's what I have found too, because I work with a lot more adolescents and teens than I do the real little ones, and guaranteeing that participation and also kind of that space is very important. Yes, the parents want to know what their teenagers are up to, and they want to know how they're doing and how they're focusing. And it's really certainly a challenge, because yes, as a parent, I want to know, is my child working on these things, because they're so important, especially now being isolated, but also allowing them to talk freely about the stress that they're feeling as well.
So how can we set boundaries in session with these external family members? And I think the biggest thing that I think has helped a lot of ways for me in my practice is sending out a preparation letter. So I have attached to your resource guide at the end through this QR code, an example of a telehealth preparation letter. So this for me is setting the expectation. This is being sent out prior to meeting with any kiddo. I know when I was transitioning over to online telehealth therapy, I would send that out prior to, and then process those expectations the first time. Again, with COVID, we kind of got thrown into these different situations where maybe the letter wasn't all available or sent out on time. So setting those expectations right from the get-go and having those conversations, I think, really helped with a lot of those boundary issues that I have seen occur in other scenarios or with other clientele. So I have, like I said, I have attached this as a resource. Please take it, please use it. It's basically just saying, find that quiet space. This time is your cherished time. We don't want other people to impose on our cherished time. It's about setting boundaries with family members, taking time for ourselves, and really connecting in a world that is so disconnected currently, and really just using that reinforcing hopeful language. It's my hope that we can build a strong online therapeutic relationship together, through that safe space. We can remain open about our communication with one another through that safe space, just reiterating that hopeful language to kind of encourage that dialogue. The second one, making a phone call, reaching out prior to session also helps set that expectation. Parents are now aware that their child is on your radar as their client, and they are not in the dark. You have awareness that that session is coming up, and you are allowing that parent to kind of help prepare the child and assisting that child, helping that child, find that safe space in their room or another room, or maybe some external outside area, whatever the case may be. But again, taking into consideration age, consent, maybe even legal issues with custody. Children can be very complicated as clients because of the legal factors that can play a role in that. So just making sure we're covering our basis as clinicians to ensure that that child is having the right conversation in the appropriate place at the appropriate time.
And I think too, something that comes up is, what if mom and dad, not everybody was able to work via telehealth. So now we have maybe siblings that are, teenage siblings perhaps that are caregivers. We have grandma coming over, or, our aunts or our neighbor. And I think that adds another level of complication, to working with, our children, adolescent clients, because now we're adding a stranger into the mix. So how do we navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, preparation seems to be key in facilitating this approach or with this demographic in particular. And then expressing to the client or family members that that space is for them, and they, reinforcing that safe space, maybe modeling how it's a safe space, whether that's, uh, if mom comes on the screen toward the end and kind of seems like she's overbearing or being a helicopter mom, just saying, this is Timmy's space for sharing and I don't want to impose. If you have questions, you can follow up with me via phone call at a different time, but this is his space for sharing and I don't want to take that safe environment away from him. Just setting those boundaries in front of Timmy as well as with mom to let them both know where we stand as the clinician providing the service to the client. And then obviously we reiterate or we continue to set those firm boundaries as needed, remembering that we have endured COVID now for a solid year. At times we may need to kind of repeat ourselves, reset those boundaries. We get set in these cycles or some of these slumps. We kind of just maybe work toward accepting some things, but reiterating, reprogramming those boundaries and just being consistent throughout. Okay, meat and potatoes. I'm so excited. So we have some great interventions lined up. We have a couple of case studies as well to discuss and apply these interventions toward. The first one I'm really excited to share with you. I found it to be very effective, but before I move on any further, all of these interventions are some way, somehow an adaptation from this great text that I have found. It is by Susan Epstein, LCSW, parenting coach. It's called Creative Interventions for Challenging Children and Adolescents. It is available on Amazon. I highly recommend it. You can print from it. You can write in it however you choose. I just printed just to give you an example of how I have adapted some of these for online techniques. So let's go ahead and show the first one. The first one is outer space, seeing the big picture. Epstein talks a lot about how to get children to pull back whenever they're escalated, overwhelmed. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a great application because of COVID. Children having anxiety, not really sure what's happening. There's this unknown virus occurring. So this is more of a mindfulness technique that I've adapted, as well as an interactive technique. So similar to what I'm modeling today by sharing my screen would be similar to what I would be doing with a client. The goal of this, I will tell you the purpose, is to encourage children to pull back and see their problems from the meta view, so a larger view, rather than being caught up right on hyper focusing on material. It's helpful for children with OCD. You start by telling the child, okay, we're going to get ready to go on a trip. We're going to be astronauts. And you could even get, you could take it up one step further and ask them to put on an astronaut outfit if they have one, or if they're really into science, and get ready. We're gonna become astronauts. We're gonna go to space and we're gonna talk about things in a safe place up in space where no one can hear us. So really just starting off our session, engaging the child immediately by kind of, working it up, getting them excited, getting them ready to participate. So let's just take 2 seconds and listen. I have provided this link with your resource tab as well. You can get them hyped up by saying, okay, we're gonna take off. We're gonna go to space. You could even say, I see your house. And we're flying. Further and further away. Look how small the earth is becoming. You can't even see your house anymore. So right about here is where I would say, okay, so the problem that we have been talking about for the past couple of weeks is now down on that little itty planet where you usually stand. It is clear down there by your house. How big do you think that problem may be from this perspective, and really process whatever the case may be? Or Have them point out cool things that they like about space or science. Again, this is applicable to children who are interested in this topic. It is a way to build immediate rapport while also keeping them engaged. You could engage in a mindfulness technique if you feel confident enough in your skill to do that, providing that soothing voice, watching the clouds transition across the earth. Watch as we are pulling up, we are becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. The anxiety, the tension, while still being engaged in this, will be very, very strong. I have found this to be very effective in my clinical work, especially with ADHD. Children, in my perspective or from my practice, really do well with focusing on some type of video, electronic, while while engaging with conversation. So that is my avenue for them to be focused, be engaged in that session. And like I said, I have provided this YouTube link for your use. If you think about it, or, oh, I saw that, it would be a great application. This takes you through all of the different planets.
Brittany, I've liked using this type of concept to say, like, now you're out of the house, because a
Yep.
lot of my issues with my children that I was working with was like, I never leave the house. I'm always in the house. So it's like, when you lift up from here, it's like, wow, here we are. We can talk about those things, and you're out of your house, you're in space, to
Absolutely.
kind of, use that different type of perspective as well.
Absolutely. And you can find other means, if you're working with a child who really identifies with a type of playing sport or interacting, you can find those interactive sports on YouTube as well that have no audio attached to them, and just saying, okay, what do you like about this sport? Tell me what you would do in this scenario. And it's automatic rapport building while also keeping the child engaged. So now look at the earth. It is so small. So there I would just pull again, like, thinking of how small that problem is becoming from this bigger perspective, and how we can step outside of the problem, become lighter, become less anxious, while also still remaining engaged. Okay.
And that's the thing. There's so many cool things on YouTube and resources. It's just, I know personally, it's hard to make myself sit down and look through some of those, but there's so many good things. So I'm glad that we have the links here and some different things for you guys to just to kick off your research and start exploring. And then once you start with one thing, you find 10 other things. So that's always
Yeah.
nice.
Absolutely. So the next one I'm actually really excited about is, well, I get excited about all of these because I'm like, oh, finally something fresh, just something new where I'm not stuck.
No,
I
for
love feeling
sure.
stuck. Um, the next one is called What Would the Lamp Say? So this is a creative problem solving strategy. If you notice a client being very black and white, very stuck, closed off, boxed in, I have lamps in my office. Believe it or not, I would have these intentionally sitting around my office as well as other objects. We would identify a problem, maybe about being boxed in, feeling like they're boxed in. Okay, well, what would the lamp say about feeling boxed in? What would a lamp say about doing that? Well, we have to shed more light on the problem. Okay, so now we're engaging and joking. We're getting that rapport built, but we're also keeping them engaged by having them identify objects throughout our office space. They could write that down. They could say, okay, well, the lamp is going to say, I need to shed more light on the problem and I feel boxed in. Okay, well, what would I don't know, my sign up here say, my picture up on the wall say? Oh, look, maybe I'm boxed in too. I don't know. Just coming up with different ways to make it interesting, but also engage in that problem solving of how they could feel less stuck.
And how
Um,
different that is from saying, you know, you keep talking about that you're stuck. What does that mean? And then they're looking at you because they don't know what it means. So having, those visuals, having a plan to kind of make them focus on, even just like you said, the object, and it makes it easier for them, to kind of talk about that. And I think that's the problem with this format, because if we were in person,
yes.
boy, we would be doing so many more creative things. But now that we are online, in some capacity, I think that's just such a great way to pull them away from just the question and answer. I call it playing tennis. I ask a question, you answer, we go back and forth. And then all of a sudden it's only 10 minutes into the session. So having some of these things can really change the perspective of how you're working.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think these are all, I mean, it really helps keep the children engaged. It's, yes, it's technology infused, but we are working with what we have right now. We are trying to physically reach through our piece of technology and be there with them in a sense. And the last one, I just got to put this out there, but the last time I used this lamp one, I also used my calendar back up there on the wall, and I said, oh, maybe the calendar would say, how long have you had this problem? So, whatever it is, to get them in the room, get them focused, engaged, but also working on those problem solving skills, I'll take it. So, and then
Mhm.
the last one is the creative brain. You may uh, do much better by preparing. Let's say you meet with this individual weekly, preparing them at the end of the first session and saying, hey, next time we're gonna do a great little activity. Could you get together some glue, some sticks, some markers if they have, or a bag? If not, no big deal. You can become creative, as we all know. But this would be working on things that are healthy coping skills or healthy activities that do not involve a type of technology, or phone or any type of media. These would be things that you could come up together with this list, which this is provided a nice little list for them, or you to write down as the clinician to keep in their file. You could time it and say, okay, how many different things can you decorate, or how many different activities could you come up with in a matter of 3 minutes? And then you could use it as a race per se, where you as the clinician come up with some within that time period, or they come up with some in that time period, and just having that dialogue back and forth, while also modeling that they are doing something without engaging in social media, playing a video game. They are actively doing what you are trying to get them to do. I'm telling you, mind blown with that one. But you're modeling that in session for them to decorate something or write down something, actively integrating that.
Yeah, we love to call it the toolbox. We're going to create your toolbox of
Yeah,
stuff that is not anything that is technology related. Is it taking a walk outside? Is it your stress ball? Is it coloring? Is it exercise? Is it just, as simple as getting a snack, or all of those things that we can work on to say, this is your go-to when you are feeling super stressed out. And I know I have one client that just loves to do this. The element of surprise. So he will write them all down, all the creative things he's come up with, put them in a jar, and he'll pick one because he knows they're all going to work. He always tells me. So he'll pick one out and say, "Oh yeah, so if I get mad today, this is what I'm going to do." And again, it's keeping him going. And we have also talked about the stuff that that you can't do. Say if you're out, you can't just start doing a bunch of jumping jacks. So we try to have stuff that is realistic, that can go in the car, that can go to grandma's, some of those coping skills that some of our maybe our more intense behavior clients could need.
absolutely. I have also added this. This is a very controversial thing that I have faced in the clinical setting. Trying to get children away from video games over COVID-19. However, I found them to be effective individually. So with certain clientele, these actually turned out to be very effective. Again, I have included a link here. These are just some of the big three ones that I hear consistently that I have educated myself on just to understand the culture. I will ask the child or client to share with me their screen if we're doing something via Zoom, and they will show me their character, what they like about their character, why they picked their character, what they like about the animated world that they have created, or how they interact, or the difference between who they think they are here versus who they become in this setting. I find it to be a lot very effective in self-disclosing, maybe perceived weaknesses or perceived things that they believe they are not getting in their real world, that the artificial or the video game world is providing them. So we actually break that down, and they don't even know I'm being therapeutic, because to them, they're just teaching an old woman how to play a game. So yeah, so highly effective. And then when they're like shocked that I know what these are, then that, okay, like that rapport is automatically built right there and then. So great avenue if you are willing to, first look into this. Some of these do have weaponry, so having that conversation with parents, if they were feeling comfortable, if they were to feel comfortable, depending on age. Minecraft does not. It's a very much just build your own world type thing. I'm not really sure about Among Us. That's something new. So
Mhm.
this is another great avenue to keep them engaged, talk about who they are in reality versus who they think they are here, what needs aren't being met, and then comparing those two images. Really great. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Focus on his behaviors, challenges at school and home. Definitely. It's crazy what children will self disclose whenever they're playing their favorite video game. It's like you go to a sensitive internal space in them when you're there with them. It's very interesting. So, very effective. I find it to be. Okay, here we go.
Okay, let me just exit that. So my case study, the first one, so we're going to kind of have a little bit of an interactive piece right now. So Gabby is a 13-year-old girl who resides with her parents, and both are teachers, which is important to the story because they're home too. Prior to the pandemic, Gabby was attending weekly therapy to address her relationship with her mother, her struggle with social skills, and her tendency to struggle with drama and some dishonest behaviors. As a result of COVID, both of her parents are working from home, and Gabby is also distance learning. Gabby's not able to see her peers, and her mom is very, very strict on her use of social media and texting. Like there's a small window that you can use. Mom has control of apps, some things like that. Gabby expresses concern that she will not have a private place for sessions because she doesn't want her parents to hear, since one of the major things is the relationship. She reported feeling increased anxiety with being home with her parents. And as a therapist, where do you begin? Because again, this is my own, being honest. It's like, we don't want to undermine the parents because they're valid and they're a part of this scenario. But also, Gabby is our client. So we want to also address these things and make her feel heard, that these are some of the, concerns that are very real to her. So this is where you kind of look and say, wow, this is a big picture, but we also have to understand that her parents are home. She's home with them. She's an only child. And oh, that feels so stressful, to me as I'm even talking about it. So does anyone either via chat or want to just share like where they would start?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Parents are working from home.
Well, for me, I definitely, I did have some sessions just with the parents. We did collaborate, we did talk because expectations, need to be altered now that everyone's home together. We all know that being 13, socialization is so important. Gabby was very, very active with sports, with swimming, with all kind of things, and she was getting her socialization from there. And yes, you know what? I did like this as well. Someone just had shared, meeting with the parent and child together to set those clear expectations. And we did that a little bit, especially when it comes to the idea of now that Gabby does not have face-to-face peer interaction, that yes, it's great that the family sets limits and boundaries. That is absolutely their right on social media and apps. But perhaps, we can tweak that a little bit now that she doesn't have any social interaction. But I think that, that was very important for me. And again, I always follow that line of, gosh, I'm a mom, their parents, but I am so loyal to Gabby because she is the client, but there's two sides to all of this. So having that collaboration was very important. And also being able to, you know, encourage Gabby to be open and honest and to say, hey, I'm feeling a lot of pressure, or hey, it's hard being home with you guys, and I don't have anyone to play with or talk to, or anything like that. Yes, art is also something very important to talk about, the roles that happen in the house, because this family they have some pretty dynamic roles, and um, structure and all of those things that are absolutely not negative, but they are a lot when you're together 24 hours a day. But the biggest part to this is having that safe space, like we talked about earlier, for Gabby to be able to share. So what we ended up working out is we have a consistent time per session, and the parents are extremely physically active. So they would use that time to, run in their neighborhood. And that worked out beautifully. It was just, we kind of came at it from as we're all talking. She had a very early session. It was 8 a.m. every, once a week. So that's where the parents used, okay, so on this day, we're going to go running. And that gave Gabby that, oh, I can breathe. I can say my mom's annoying, or I can say I hate being here. And just express herself in a way that's open and authentic to herself, because it's real to her. So that was a big part of it. And as the parents gave her that privacy and that time, we had a lot of positive things happen with just having those conversations and talking about expectations on both sides, because a 13-year-old can be very, their expectations are very, very, very high, and not seeing the big picture, of like from a parental perspective. So having that give and take and having those times was just wonderful. But yes, some of the interventions that I've used for Gabby is, journaling, to give her a space, and also to use it to write down things for our next session, because it's hard to remember things from, 1 week to the next. We did a lot of role play on how to engage with her mom. And again, too, this is the parents' first and only child. So they've not been through teenage years before. They have not been through this life stage before. So there was a little bit of learning on both ends. A big point of contention was accountability with things in the home. So developing that task list, she always said that, my parents treat me like I'm a baby. Well, I hear you, but when you have all of these responsibilities that you're not doing, and you don't like your parents to constantly be nagging you, let's look at that a little bit. So then she was able to develop something more independent. Again, just finding that time to collaborate and offer that psychoeducation that sometimes parents need, whether it's on a diagnosis, whether it's on a developmental stage, whether it's on, hey, other teenagers are experiencing this, especially when it's an only child, and you don't have a lot of that, experience. So I will say we have growing pains with this, and, we're constantly evolving and constantly reconnecting. But overall, I think both the parents and Gabby have worked so hard, and the relationship has continued to improve. Of course, hiccups along the way. I mean, obviously we're all confined together, but now that, school is starting back and sports are starting back, I just see so much improvement. But yeah, I am seeing so many, wonderful comments, in the chat box. And I love the idea of the shared journal, that they can talk about that communication and feedback and what we need to do to kickstart that relationship. Parents offering to leave the home during our session so that the client can have privacy in a small apartment. Yes, even a small place, let alone a big house that, people can go different places. So I'm glad to hear all of these really nice creative ideas. I think sometimes as trained clinicians, we forget to look outside the box sometimes. And this, I think, COVID and all of the telehealth stuff is really, I know, kickstarted, my creativity and kind of pushed me a little bit outside of my, comfort zone to find some of these interventions as well.
Okay, with what little time we have left, I have a second case study here if I can get to it.
Oh my gosh, how is this possible? Time is rolling. I think
know.
they can see we love this topic. So
Okay, so I have a fictitious case study with a 5 to 6 year old mixed race male, autism spectrum disorder. I'm trying to get my box. I'm sorry, my box does not want to move. But Billy, 5.5 years old, residing with his paternal elderly grandmother. Family has reported that biological mother has passed away. He primarily lives with his grandmother. His father has been deported with everything going on. Mild form of autism spectrum disorder. As a clinician, it has been discussed with grandmother the concerns about the depletion of social skills, interaction skills, those daily things that this child would be getting in a school setting, now kind of taken away with COVID. He's at risk, as well as grandmother being at risk for COVID, being brought home to her as his only caretaker. Him with the social skills, this is a very complicated, high risk case. What are your initial thoughts on how to approach this?
Mm.
I can tell you, initially, I had linked up electronically with grandmother since she was the legal guardian. Got the email address, sent over consents via email for her to fill out electronically regarding school involvement for myself, as well as blended case management services, just to make sure that we are all communicating and on the same page for this individual. Speaking with grandmother consistently about the concern as students were transitioning back into the school setting, the need for that structure, that need for familiarity, that concern that he is at home, but also understanding her fear of sending him back and then contracting the virus, being his only caretaker.
Mm.
So very high risk. Amy,
Oh,
what
so
were your thoughts?
stressful too with, the just the descriptors of the elderly grandmother and, a 5.5-year-old. They have so much energy and, I think there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So trying to collaborate with school, collaborate with blended case management, making sure that all resources and support are in place. Obviously, can't force the grandmother to send her grandson back to school, but just trying to make sure that we have everyone on the same page.
Hmm.
Also family grief, yeah,
Yes.
counseling, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So here are
Grieving not
some,
only the mother, but then the father, I
yeah,
believe too.
yeah, yep, and for the grandmother,
Mhm.
now we have this motherly role to take on as an elder, being kind of tossed into the demands of that. So very much so. So here are some creative interventions to keep Billy involved, engaged, while still working on social skills. I love I Spy. I love doing I Spy. I will intentionally put colorful, bright things in my office. I do it intentionally. I place them intentionally. We talk about what the object is. Maybe I'll have him attempt to spell it. Really keeping that social interaction going. I will redirect with eye contact, or if he's all over the room, trying to get him to redirect. If he's not really wanting to engage on my end, I will have him engage on his end. So find items that are read in his room. Instead of looking on my screen, I'll have him physically get up in his room and go find things on his end. Simon Says is a really good one to redirect, get them back where you need them to be. It also gives them a break from if we're having a deep discussion or trying to or working on those frustrating social skills. And then again, going back to interactive web games, interventions, that type of thing. But I think the biggest thing is keeping it engaging and keeping it, consistently redirected as needed. That's a pretty high risk case that I have been monitoring for some time. So getting better, but always a work in progress. Okay. I'm sorry, Amy, what were you going to say?
I was just looking in the chat box, also using humor in session, eye contact, reducing session sometimes. If need be,
Absolutely.
we've all been there too, saying that clinically, we're not able to sustain and do good clinical work if we could stretch it out to an hour, but we're not doing anything,
Absolutely.
ethically, what is that? And I also wonder, Brittany, with your case too, are they opening up, summer camps? Are they starting to open up some of the ASD supportive services
Yeah.
too? Again, not sure if grandma would, be open to that, but hopefully, as things start to open up, I've seen some camps sending some brochures and stuff out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm hoping with the vaccination as well becoming more publicly available, we'll see a transition here, but I've already started planting some seeds. But for now, with what we have, that has been very interesting. It's been a learning process for me as well. I do believe that we are coming up to the end of our time. I wasn't sure if our moderator needed to launch a poll or not. I'm not sure who our moderator is. I'm not sure. But does anybody have any questions? I can put up this QR code. These are just our references, nothing too special. While we answer a couple of things. Can open great
Brittany,
session.
did we record this ourselves or is the
It
organization?
is. It is automatically being recorded.
Okay, because I had a couple of people wanted to, have have this recording and whether it's showing it in a class or using it, again for like a teaching type of thing. So I guess that we'll have to wait on the conference themselves to post.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. So I'm not really sure about the poll. Maybe someone could help direct me to poll sharing. I know that was a question.
Unfortunately, the polls have not been working.
Oh, okay. There you go.
That's why I was suggesting opening up to Q&A if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Also, yes, the meeting is recorded and I can inquire when it will be available for you ladies.
So what you do with the QR code, you just hold your smart device up. So if you have an iPhone or something similar, you just turn it on, turn the camera on, hold it over the QR code. There's nothing on my phone happening right now.
Yeah,
So
I was
don't
gonna
feel
say,
like, yeah,
I don't know why I'm
demonstrating
demonstrating it too.
but you just hold it over the QR code. It'll then automatically pop up a Safari window on your phone. You click on that. It gives you access to all of the PDF resources you can even download. So I will bring that up real quick again for everybody as we are finishing up here, just to give you access to our oh, well, I just closed it. So, okay, is that, yeah, that's it. I have it here. So this is still just a picture of our QR code. If you want to hold your phone up to it, you can get those resources still.
Technology is a wonderful thing. in this instance, not with therapy all the time, but with this.
Yeah, it's even a great way to get things to your clients faster, right? So I can have this QR code ready to go if a parent is asking for psychoeducation on ADHD symptomology. This was just a file that I had generated of PDF files. They can hold their phone up, there it is, and they can print it off or download it or have instant access. So QR codes are pretty cool, very easy to make, and they're free. So absolutely. Okay.
Well, it's been so nice spending a little bit of time with everyone, and thank you for the nice feedback that we've been receiving in the chat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was such a pleasure, everyone. If we don't have any more questions, we are so thankful for the opportunity we had with all of you today. We hope that we gave you a little bit of information that you can take with you in implementing in your own practice, or if you're teaching, or however the case may be, just some creative strategies to keep us fresh, keep us current. And as always, it was a pleasure, and we look forward to doing this again next year.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.